So why don't we go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for joining us. It's a pleasant evening, hopefully, where you're at in July. This is our July edition of the monthly Second Tuesday Writer Discussion Group. And today's topic that we're going to discuss is creative ways to vision the future of spiritual writing. Before we get started, just one announcement to make. In case you haven't seen it already, we just announced the registration is open for the very first children's conference that Writing for Your Life has ever done. And just like all the conferences that we're doing this year, it is online, and it's going to take place from September 21st through 25th. And just like the Writing for Your Life conference that I did recently, there's nothing overlapping. Every, presentation, every Q&A, every book discussion's got its own slot. So you can watch them all in real time, or in this case, they're going to be available for like 9 months following the conference. And the reason for 9 months, which is basically to allow for teachers and educators and librarians and whoever, that are busy with their school year to be able to watch the sessions, whenever they can, basically, after the initial conference. So we're very excited about this. People like Jennifer Grant, who's on this call with us tonight, have encouraged me to do this, which I greatly appreciate, and, stuck the idea in my ear initially. And so now we're making it happen. And so anyway, so take a look at that. It's on the Writing for Your Life website under conferences. But for tonight, one thing I want to really be clear about is that, this is meant to be an open discussion of everyone participating, not just, the panelists, or the particular authors who I've invited. I mean, this is open for everyone to participate and contribute. So please, feel free to do that. Unmute yourself, to ask a question, make a comment, whatever, whatever you would like. But just to get it started, I'll ask folks to think about or to talk about, given the way this year has evolved, which, I have to say, and I've, got enough gray hairs that, I've been around the block a few times. This is one of the most bizarre and challenging years I've ever seen for our society. So given all of that, how do you see spiritual writing evolving? And how does that look to you? So whoever would like to talk about that, please feel free to chime in.
Well, I'll start us off.
Brian, this is Kate. Maybe I can.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. My audio's a little choppy, so you please go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, well, I was just going to say I would love to hear from everybody on the call about this question. I had a meeting earlier this week with, I'm publishing a book with Church Publishing, which is the publishing arm of the Episcopal Church. And it was with a number of authors who have also published with them. And we touched on this a little bit about what, one of the people on the call was a seminary professor and dean, and she was talking about how she and the professors that are at her school are really revisiting their reading lists of what they're reading for their theology classes. And she felt like it was a very positive thing that, not only the pandemic, but the pandemic sort of made us all stop and stay home and pay attention to what's happening in the world. And then when George Floyd was murdered, people had the time or the attention span or something to pay attention in a way that hasn't happened in the same way previously. And so she was talking about just how for the first time they're making actual real changes and real changes to their reading lists and really looking for more writers of color and to hear from people that often they haven't included at their seminary. And so I think one, looking at the future of spiritual writing, I think and hope it'll be a lot more diverse and it'll look much more like the world rather than just kind of, white men or white men and women. And so, that's just one thing I'm hoping and thinking might be the case.
Well, I think, with the proliferation of the internet, social media, and with video cameras, right? I mean, the degree to which we can all be aware, of things that happen, particularly really problematic things that happen, is really, really heavily enhanced. And I totally agree, Jen, about a lot of folks are paying more attention, than what may usually be the case, because they're watching TV or they're on their phone or online when they might be out at the beach, or on vacation or whatever, away for the summer, so to speak. I definitely agree that seems to be one of the attributes of what's going on.
And we also have because of the pandemic, people are in a more reflective and somber mood, so they're able not just to distract themselves with whatever they normally distract themselves with. And so, in a way, it's like this time where, I've said this a couple times, maybe even on our calls, Brian, but that this time just has really felt like a magnifying glass. Like the pandemic really makes you examine your own life, the way your household runs, the way your country is running, the problems, the joys, the triumphs, all these different things, but you're seeing everything in such detail and with such intention, and you see your own choices and you see your own failure to act and your own actions in a different way, because things are so irregular. And so, I think that's one way that God is moving in this time is to reveal things that have been there before, obviously, and have been ignored too many times. And so as spiritual writers, there's a lot we can write about.
What do others think about this?
This is Kate. I'm trying to find a better place in my, I'm up in rural Vermont. Is that better? Good. So hi everybody, I'm Kate Rademacher. I'm from North Carolina, but I'm calling in from Vermont, so my internet's a little wobbly, so just start waving at me if you lose me. But Jennifer, I just really wanted to appreciate and amplify what you said about the paying attention. I think you really just captured it well for me, that that we're all paying attention in different ways. And part of, I think, the spiritual path and the writing life is about paying attention. So, Brian, your question of how does this time change our creative process? I think it's changed our country's consciousness, as you said, and then also I think that can affect our writing and our spiritual path. And I've talked about this on these other groups, but I've been in this strange and blessed situation because I actually have a book manuscript due next week to Broadleaf Books, which is the imprint of Fortress, and it's focused on Sabbath and rest. And so I was halfway through the manuscript when coronavirus hit, and so I really had to pivot both my content and my process, and we even changed the subtitle. Before it was Sabbath in a nonstop world, now it's Sabbath in a restless world, because the world is obviously not nonstop anymore. But I think I also have been reflecting on the Black Lives Matter movement and the violent deaths in my writing, and I've written about several chapters about that, which I had, was not in my original outline. I had planned to address social justice, but it's come out as a much bigger theme, and sort of thinking about rest, the theology of rest and the theology of work in the context of our social justice work is what I've ended up exploring a lot. So and I'll just say one more thing, which is what I've ended up really leaning into is this idea of like, do people save the world? Do we save the world through our, and again, during a global pandemic, who's going to save us? Is it going to be our ingenuity, our effort, our ethics as humans? Is it going to be God's grace? Is it going to be both? And that's what I've ended up really writing about. And the backdrop of a global pandemic and sort of white violent supremacy coming to the sort of global consciousness of our country has been just such a profound way to be wrestling with those questions of who's really going to, quote unquote, save the world. So anyway, that's my kind of lengthy response to your provocative question, Brian.
So Camille, you want to talk?
Yes. Hi, Brian. Hi, everyone. I kind of jotted down some stuff, so I'm looking down a little bit. But I think these times bring spirituality to the forefront, and that we hear more about diversity and prayer because of so much illness and so many deaths. It forces us to think less surface and more in-depth about our actions, to be more appreciative of simple pleasures and each other, how much we mean to each other. I'm a spiritual and patient person anyway, but I've noticed that I'm even more patient. I live in New York and I teach high school, so I have learned patience over time, but like today, I have an example. Someone took a parking space from me. It was clearly mine, but, I said, okay, and I drove off. And I didn't think about it anymore until now that I'm giving you this example. So usually it's like, and you think about it and you linger and you say, I gave up my space, that wasn't right. But I've become to realize that these things are not important. What does that mean? Nothing. And so I think a lot of people are thinking like that. So that's what I mean by less surface. I have time to linger in prayer. I presented at my school. We had a professional development day. And I was doing my morning run and I said, wait a minute. I'm the only African-American teacher at my school. So I figure I should, make a presentation, use some of my experiences and do some speaking on that. And so since that time, I've been writing things. Things have been just coming to me like crazy. And so I have lots of scraps of paper, things in a special file, and I'm just loving this. So I think it's a very negative situation, unfortunate situation to lose so many people and all these things happening, and we don't know what's going to happen, perplexity. But at the same time, it's brought a lot of positive situations and ideas to the forefront as well. So I think it opens the door for much, much more writing for me.
Well, that's really good that, this has been such a increase in productivity for you, and kind of inspiring, so to speak. What kinds of things have you been writing about? Any particular areas?
Well, I've been writing about, I did another webinar. I was involved in another webinar, and they gave us activities to do. So I started to, they asked us to write down 10 topics, just like 10 titles of something that we would write. And I wrote down 10 topics like nothing. I don't think I have them in front of me, but I wrote down 10 topics and I said, wow, I can really write something about this. And then we had to select one and then write the last paragraph. It was actually flash fiction, and had to write the last paragraph based on that title. So I did that. And so now I'm like, oh, this opens the door for more ideas and things like that. And I've been writing poetry. I wrote a spoken word piece, which I don't basically write. I usually just write poetry. There's a difference. But I did write a spoken word piece that I shared at my school when I did the presentation. So yeah, that's the things I've been writing about. And then I become interested in social justice. And that wasn't really anything that I really, thought about writing about so much, but it just it was there, I guess, dormant. So I've written a little bit of that as well.
Cool. So Michelle, did you want to say something?
Yes, I want to thank everybody that shared before me, and I agree with most of what I heard. I think that COVID-19 was an opportunity for us, for me as a spiritual writer, to rest, but also to reflect. And it was a welcome. I felt like it was a gift, but then when George was killed and the whole Black Lives Matter movement began, it almost felt like I was forced to use my voice in ways that I never expected to have to use it. And like I became an activist without wanting to be an activist at my job, in my community. And so as a Black professional, I'm a peer support specialist who works with mental health consumers and people in recovery. And for the first time, I was kind of understanding, in light of systemic racism, how these health disparities came to light and how pervasive they are through so many different color systems. Most of the population that lives where I live, which is Berks County, Pennsylvania, is Hispanic. And I am African American, but the pervasiveness of the illnesses just really shone for me. And because I feel like I have a call to write, I felt like God is kind of expanding my call, and I'm kind of wrestling with it, I have to be honest. And so my creativity has always focused on the mental health piece and the recovery piece and the spirituality, but now it almost feels like it has to include, how people of color have had to deal with systemic racism in their evolution of their identities as people, whether that's professional or non-professional, whether that's recovering or not recovering, So it's been a journey, and I think it's still an ever evolving journey, because me and my supervisor were talking today about how we are tired of COVID-19. Now we're in Pennsylvania, and we're not on one of this. We're in Pennsylvania, so we're not in Florida, we're not in the southern part of the country, but what does that mean for my writing? How does that impact my writing and what I have to say and what I'm hearing from people who might respond to my blog? So that's what I was thinking about.
I mean, isn't it, interesting that, maybe finally, the whole racism, systemic racism is impacting almost everyone. Anybody that I talk to or hear from, has got to be dealing with this in one way or the other somehow,
Yes.
and that affects, everyone differently. But, it's interesting to hear that, your focus has, shifted away from the topics that you, not away from, but in addition to the topics that you, more heavily focused on originally.
Yeah, and it's almost, I have to say, it's kind of, it's unsettling, because I've been in this country for 55 years today. And so I, like many of my peers, have a trajectory that we followed from, being a child into our teenager years and into our adult years. And a lot of people like me have not talked about it. We've taken it, different things in stride and just part of everyday life. But now, because so many people are giving voice to what's going on, Mental Health America, just so many partnerships are having webinars on racism, on what depression looks like for men of color, just across the board. The Copeland Center, just everyone is doing all these webinars, and it does kind of make you feel almost like America has become this space where it's safe to talk about color. It's safe to talk about our experiences. But at the same time, it does kind of push against this don't address the issue stance that we've had for 50 and more years. So it's interesting. It's very interesting.
No, I can so relate to that too. It's like I grew up in corporate America. And, there were several topics that you just did not talk about at work, right? Race, religion, politics, sex, they're just, so many things like that, were just kind of off limits, that, spoken or unspoken rules that, and so I think a lot of our society was that way.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things that were under the radar or whatever, that just were covered up and not opened up to talk about. And I think, quite frankly, that's part of the reason why we have the problems that we do, is because we've been unwilling to deal with things that should have been dealt with.
I'm writing a book. My book is called Healing Gently. And it started, of course, with one ideology, but it has definitely morphed. And I wanted this second book that I wrote to kind of be sustained by the writings of other people, to bring in other voices. And so I bought this book called The Body Keeps Record. And I haven't cracked it open yet, but I can't help but think about how our bodies are keeping record of COVID-19, how our bodies have kept record of systemic racism in light of our spirituality. And so what does all this look like against the backdrop of biblical studies, against the backdrop of the context of the gospel, et cetera, et cetera. So I had to join this call because Writing for Your Life is actually part of the name of my email address.
Oh, good.
I've had my email address for more than a decade, and it's She Writes for Life.
Oh, good, good.
So when I came across this group earlier this year, it was only about 6 weeks ago, I just felt like God was saying, this is where you belong.
Oh, good. No, I'm glad to hear that. So before I started Writing for Your Life, I worked for Frederick Buechner and his family, and he had written a book called Listening to Your Life.
Okay.
And so when I was trying to think up a name for what do I call this new endeavor, to help writers, I was talking with another friend of mine, and we came up with the name Writing for Your Life, like running for your life, writing for your life, like this is important, right? This is serious, not just frivolous. And
Yes.
so that's pretty cool that you came up with the same, terminology well
Yes.
before I did.
Yeah. So thank you. I want to hear from other voices.
Yeah, what is everyone else thinking?
Well,
Kate is asking if you could share your blog link, Michelle.
I will definitely share my blog link, but I launched a new website last night, so I am going to be transitioning over, but I will give you the old blog link in the chat right now.
Good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Karen.
hi.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. Been kind of processing the conference. Thank you very much for hosting that. I'm going to sign up for your next one at the end of the month as well.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Had a great meeting with Javon.
Oh, good. Okay.
She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. So we're still having conversations, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Good.
And thinking about the this time of COVID, being a pastor, I'm constantly evolving and trying to think of how to do my job different, which is kind of exhausting. But the thing that struck me, and a few things that got talked about during the conference too, were it seems like one of the gifts of this time has been making more time to read. Part of it is I changed my routine a little bit. I used to go to kind of this rec center to work out every day. Now I bought an exercise bike so I could do it at home, because I moved into a new apartment where I had room for a bike. And so since I'm at home, I've been, since I'm legally blind, I have a lot of my books on a talking book machine. And I've been reading Ibrahim X. Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, is one of many I'm reading. And I think the gift of this time is taking more time to read other people and hear other voices that a lot of times I don't listen to or haven't. I thought I listened to, but I really hadn't. And then I have to write a pastor's corner twice a month for our newsletter. And so I just put out there kind of my reading Kendi's book and some of the things that really struck me. I haven't gotten any takers yet. I invited people to join me in reading it, but no one's really taken me up on that yet. But just, and he reads the book, which is really awesome, because sometimes on our talking books, we get the books that are done commercially, so we actually get the author that reads them. So I find myself, and I'm reading a bunch of other stuff, I sort of bounce around, but I've been more intentional about doing reading and hearing other voices, and then I find myself bouncing off their ideas, and sort of generating things for the book I'm working on. And I found it really challenging because I had to really confront my own issues of racism and my own sense as a person with a disability. I feel there's a lot of empathy in the justice issues that are there, but it's not the same. And I've had to really confront the idea that, you know, that there are privileges I have as a white person that others don't have. So it's really made me think deeply about some things that I thought I had really processed, but I find I really need to go deeper. And I feel like that's really generating some passion for what I feel like I need to say that's unique. So I think part of the gift of this period is, and I keep talking to my congregation about it being an in-between time. It's a germinating time. I just did the parable of the sower, where I talk about maybe where the seeds of God's word are in our hearts, in the ground, in the dark, and they need to get watered, and we need to let them just be for a while, and it's going to grow. So I find just being able to read and hear other voices has really had a major impact for me.
That's really great. I'm just curious, out of, you know, all the different presentations and sessions that you listened to or attended on the online mega conference, you know, which stand out to you the most?
Well, I really liked the format this time because, you know, usually when I went to your workshop that you did at Princeton at my old seminary 2 years ago, and, you know, when you go to a workshop, you have to pick. You can only, you know, you get to hear the keynote, but then you pick these workshops. This time you got to hear them all, which was pretty awesome. But there are a lot of them I didn't have time because of work. I didn't get to listen to, and I get to go back and listen to them. So I'm pretty excited about that. But I found, of course, Barbara Brown Taylor's presentations were amazing. She's always great to listen to. I liked Javon's presentations, and that's kind of what inspired me to do a one-on-one with her, because at first I was sort of intimidated about that. But as a literary agent, I thought, well, I'll take the plunge. This is a safe place. So I liked her presentations about a literary agent as a companion and friend in the process. So I found that really pretty amazing. But then also a couple of presentations that I think, I can't think of your name. You're in the upper right corner for me now, but you were at one of the presentations.
Jennifer Grant?
Jennifer, yeah. I liked Jennifer's.
Yes.
And then I liked the, Jennifer, weren't you the one that did about the children's books?
I did, yes.
Yeah. So you inspired me to think about, I never thought I'd ever write, I don't have kids. I've never had kids. God knew better than give me children. So I think it'd be ironic if I was inspired to write a children's book. But Jennifer, I liked your presentations. And this time, I don't know, Brian, if I came away from this workshop feeling much more optimistic and encouraged. Last time I went, I just thought, it's useless. I shouldn't even try this. I don't have a platform. This is you're kidding yourself. You want to be a writer. But this time afterwards, I came out, all generated with juice and ideas and things I hadn't thought about before, and possibilities. And it was just really, and for me as a person that can't drive, doing it online was awesome because I got to go to everything.
Good.
I kind of liked that. That was, that was kind of cool. Although I'm getting a little zoomed out some days, but
I think we all are.
It was really, you had some really great presenters, I thought, this time that were just, I liked how people talked about writing as a calling. I felt that before, but it was articulated in so many different ways throughout the workshop that I found that really encouraging.
Good. Well, that's really good. That's really good feedback and really good to hear, that you got that much out of it. I feel very blessed in terms of the high quality of speakers that I get to work with, these conferences. There are just so many great people that are really passionate, quite frankly, about helping, earlier stage authors. So that's just, I'm very thankful for that.
And I think that's what I found really encouraging was that, people that have published, you have people there that have published several books or in several formats. Could be, hey, I've done it, I'm set. But instead, everybody was like trying to encourage us newer writers. And I just thought that was really uplifting for me.
Well, I'm really glad you took advantage of, like the one-on-one meetings too, because it's like, it's not real often that people get to meet with an agent or, a publishing house editor at, one of the prominent publishing houses. So, I'm always a little bit surprised that more people don't take up that opportunity because it's relatively rare and, it's just worth a lot to build those relationships.
But it's scary. When you're somebody like me that's not published anything. Well, I published one little thing in a trade book one time, but for those of us new at it, it's really intimidating. I'm like, oh, this person isn't going to want to talk to me. And
but these are all people that don't. These are all people that are doing it because they want to do it.
Yeah.
And there's no expectations about you have to be this, or this in order to show up, for one of these. They're just casual, informal conversations about whatever you want to talk about. So anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
Okay.
This is Kate, and thanks for your comments. I'm reading the How to Be an Anti-Racist book too, and I'm really be hugely impacted by it, so thanks for that. I just want to say, Brian, I did 3 of the one-on-ones from the last conference, and I kept saying to people, I think this is just more of a spiritual direction session. I really like, again, to say that I think you said, I didn't hear the Giovanni's talk, but the sort of that it's about being a companion. I mean, being, really seeing. And I had a talk with Patricia Rabin, and she was so generous. We spent almost an hour on the phone together. And at the end, I did ask her for some more specific writing advice. And she said, it's really about the relationships, which is what I find in my day job, professionally, is that so much of it is through networking, quote unquote, and relationships. And so anyway, just a small comment of appreciation for the one-on-ones too.
I could not overemphasize that point. Any place I've ever been in any type of business, the most important thing is the relationships that you build, for so many different reasons. but yeah, I'm glad that, it worked out that way for you. So another kind of facet of this, I'm curious what people are thinking in terms of ways that they have specifically tried to cultivate their own creativity during, this time when we're more isolated. So what kinds of, things have all of you been doing to, try to, bring out your own creativity?
I'm happy to answer this. I've been trying to be really intentional about this because I think, like all of us, I've had different sort of phases in this period of time. Like initially there was like sort of just trying to let your brain catch up with what's going on and figure out how family life looks and how to just sort of navigate the ordinary life issues. And I have felt like a real invitation. Michelle, I think you used the word invitation a few times when you were speaking. But like I felt like an invitation to try new things and to take different risks, to kind of dabble in things. And I love that idea that we can do that as writers. If you're a poet or a spiritual memoirist or a fiction writer, you can always dabble in other things as well and jump in and enjoy that. I read a couple years ago a book written by Stephen Fry, who's the British actor who was in Jeeves and Wooster. He was Jeeves. I don't know if anyone ever saw that PBS series. It's a great, it was great for me when my kids were little because it's kind of funny and silly and they all kind of, like to laugh at it. But anyway, Stephen Fry wrote a book called The Ode Less Traveled. I don't know if anyone has seen it, but his idea is that as people grow older, and I'm going to paraphrase this badly, but so just know this is what he said plus all the filters that I had in understanding it. But he talked about the fact that as adults, sometimes if we feel like going to a painting class or like having an evening where you make pottery or whatever, we give ourselves permission to do that. Whereas we take poetry and writing so seriously that unless we really consider ourselves like a published poet or a serious literary, whatever, we sometimes don't let ourselves play with things. And so his book, The Ode Less Traveled, is all about the different parts of poetry and kind of encouraging people to hold it a little bit less reverently and to play with it and play with that genre and do it. And so I've been trying in that same sort of, I don't know, concept. I mean, I've been trying to do different things and try out different literary forms or just enjoy reading different things. And so I do write for kids as well as adults, and I have been reading a lot of children's books and middle grade books, and that's been fun, and just kind of jotting down different ideas. And Karen, I remember you talking, I think you talked in my picture book session about the fact that people wouldn't believe it if they knew that I was trying to write for children, but I encourage you to do that and to just let yourself take those risks and have fun, just like the way if you had a friend who was like, hey, next weekend I'm going to go, to this town and we're going to do like a pottery studio day or whatever. There's no reason why we can't play and explore and risk with words the way that we might with paint or pastels or whatever when we have that desire to create something. I've also taken advantage of a number of free kind of resources. I really love the author Kate DiCamillo, and she did like a book talk about her book, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, and it was a live kind of like book club thing where she talked about the book. And so I've been doing things like that, journaling a lot. And I'm finding too, like today I was writing my journal, and I'm doing more sort of sketching, sketching the shape of what I'm working on a book right now. And I really want to take risks with it and enjoy kind of this time that turns everything upside down and makes us, it's an in-between time, as Karen said. So I want to allow that to change me as a writer too. So today I was journaling and thinking about the structure of this book that I'm working on. It's also Kate for Broadleaf Books, and it's due in November. And so today I really, instead of writing or, doing research, I doodled it. Like I was doodling shapes and kind of drawings just to kind of like access different parts of my own imagination. Trying to see like, what would it feel like to read this book? Would it be like a wave? And so I was drawing waves, or would it be more like a spiral or a labyrinth, or where am I bringing the reader in this? And so I think this time has made me remember that I'm in this field. I love to write because I have these, kind of wild ideas, and kind of, I love taking risks. I love kind of playing with things. And so I think I'm bringing more play into my writing because of this time. And I think I said that to you, Brian, when we spoke last about writing, that, you were asking if I prefer writing for children or writing for adults. And I think I kind of beamed about the books I've written for kids, and you were like, I think you might like writing for kids more. But on that call I said, and I mean it, like I hope that I will integrate the sort of playfulness and the space and the daydreaminess, if that makes sense, that I bring to when I write for kids to my work for adults. And so, yeah, I just feel like this time, one of the gifts in this really difficult period is just the opportunity to hit reset a little bit and think, okay, well, how do I like what I'm doing? What can I bring to it that I'm not? How can I go deeper, or how can I, just bring more of who I am to what I'm doing? And so I guess that's a very rambly answer, but that's how I would answer that.
Cool. Cool. What are other steps are people taking to, cultivate their creativity? Well, I would like to share something on that topic from actually a blog article that I read and posted this morning. It's from my favorite marketing guru, Mark Schaefer. And he has this blog post that says 4 ways to jumpstart your content marketing by creating insights instead of information. And the article is about creativity. And, he has 4 different, recommendations. And one of those recommendations, in particular struck me because it talks about connecting with people. And, right now, this is one of the toughest things for us to do. Is to connect with people the same ways that we had in the past. And I know for myself, during the spring and summer this year, I was producing 6 conferences of my own and speaking at several others. And of course, all that went away in terms of, the in-person aspects of all those things. So I think, making an extra effort to connect with people online, by phone, however you're able to do it. There's another book, really fascinating book that I read last summer that was called Where Good Ideas Come From. And it was basically a sociological research and analysis of literally that question: where do good ideas come from? What elements, what environmental characteristics best support the development of good ideas? And, the bottom line of it is interacting with more people. It's like, back in the day when all of our interactions were defined geographically, right? We were limited by the distance of a horse and buggy or whatever. The whole geographic element of connecting with people was, so much more important than what it is now, even though that's still. So basically what he found is that, good ideas, really big ideas got started in urban environments because there were a lot of people there bumping into each other in, casual, semi-random situations. And none of us know everything. Right? We can all sit in our offices behind our desk, whatever, and think as hard as we want for as long as we want. And we're still never going to think of everything, that's a good idea or something we hadn't thought of before, an insight or whatever. So, making a conscious effort to try to interact more with other people, whether it's something like this, what we're doing right now, or whatever, I think is just like one of the most important ways that we can spend our time. So, for what it's worth.
Well, and back to the power of networking and people. So, I've met Kathy Izzard partly through Writing for Your Life and sent her my draft manuscript, and she just sent me back some comments, and just a couple of small comments she made prompted me to add an additional and totally new opening for the book, and also like an appendix at the end, which I'm calling a quick start guide to Sabbath keeping. And really, it was just like 2 little questions that Kathy asked me. She asked me, are you going to include something in the back with practical tips? And now I spent all morning writing that. So
That's awesome.
I think we can still, even though we're not together, we can still review each other's work and provide comments. And I mean, to me, that's the most, I'd be curious what other, I have not joined group writers groups. I really prefer to exchange feedback one-on-one with people. I just feel like I get a much more deep relationship one-on-one where I can really read their work in depth and get feedback one-on-one. Anyway, so, but again, that can still obviously happen during coronavirus, and that's, the most, peer review is so useful for me to help hone my work, but also kind of get creative juice.
So Brian, hi. A few things. I think physical activity helps me, even house cleaning. But I like to run early mornings. So when I'm running, I always get ideas. They're in my head and I try to hold on to them until I get home. So working out and running. Also have a writing partner. I also have a poet friend. So sometimes we exchange, we read 10 or 15 poems each. We take turns. We critique. So I love poetry. So, just reading my poetry or presenting it, memorizing it, and those kinds of things. So that, those things fuel my writing.
Cool. Karen, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was thinking about a couple of things. One was, it's this group's fault, so I hope you all are happy. Actually, one of the first of the Tuesday night groups you had inspired me to get Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way.
Oh, right.
I had it before, and I think before I moved overseas, when I purged my library, I got rid of it. So fortunately, I found it on my talking book, in my talking book library, and then I ordered a hardback copy so I could make reference to certain parts of it. So I've been trying to do the daily pages. I call them the daily pages because I have to confess I don't always get them done in the morning like she suggests. But I found that that's been real inspiring for just getting me writing again. And then I dug up all my old journals, and I had some ideas how to integrate some of that into my book. So I was like, oh, well, that's cool. And then thinking about what see, everybody moves. I think it was Camille said earlier about having a writers group, and I have to say, I've said this before, I had a great writers group when I lived in Prague, Czech Republic, and it was a mixture of a lot of us expats from all over the world and a couple Czechs, and we joked around and we said we were a drinking group with a writing problem because we always had our wine, that's a big thing, or our beer and snacks and stuff, but they were really inspiring to me because we met about once a month, and it inspired me to write try different kinds of. I even wrote a poem one time in Czech. And the Czech person in our group didn't laugh at me, so I was pretty impressed by that. It was pretty bad, but it was just really inspiring for me it kind of kept me fresh, and I got to see how other people, their process and what they wrote. In fact, one of my friends, Alistair, I'm going to get up verklempt. He was from England, but originally from Scotland, and he wrote some of the most amazing fantasy stuff. He died last summer, and so I keep thinking back about him and wondering if there's a way we can publish some of this, because he had a great ongoing fantasy story that was just amazing that he never got published. Why? Because he died way too young. He died in his 50s from cancer. But the group just was really, I miss it a lot because I haven't found anything like it here since I've been back in the States. This is the closest. But in the writers group, we exchange our articles and our writing and different things. So it's nice if you can have a partner or one or two other people, but I haven't found either yet. So I'm still lurking. I'm putting it into the universe there and hoping God will open some doors for me to maybe find another group. But it just, at that point in my life, I was in it for 2 or 3 years, and it was just really an inspiring camaraderie that I haven't felt with a lot of people since then. So there's my 10 cents.
Yeah. So, Patrice?
Yeah, I usually don't talk, but I can contribute to the ideas. I do a couple of things. First of all, when this whole thing started, I was still in grad school, so I'm still trying to adjust to just everything changing while I was in school. But one thing I do have is a writing app. It's called Day One, and it's pretty inexpensive. I think it's $50 per year, and I do suggest buying the paid version of it, so you can keep up with your stuff. But every day they give you a writing prompt. It could be something as silly as what is your favorite drink to, what inspires you to. So every day there's a prompt. Something else I do is I restarted my prayer walks. And I live in Washington, D.C., and I do live on Capitol Hill. I figured that out by walking. I did not know where I lived in D.C. A pastor friend of mine was gracious, and she's letting me stay in her parsonage until I can kind of figure out what's next for me. But on these prayer walks, I have one objective, and is to find the perfect picture to put on Instagram. But I also realized that by looking for that picture, I'm seeing things that I wouldn't normally see. I'm challenging myself to make a comment about the picture. Yesterday, I noticed that when I walk down Pennsylvania, I come across the Department of Justice, then I come across the IRS, and then the next thing to that is Trump's Hotel. And I never noticed that before. And so when I post on Instagram, people sometimes comment, and that'll give more ideas. So trying to use social media to kind of get people talking and seeing what people are talking about. And I like Instagram because it's a simple interface. You put a picture up, people commented on it. It's not like Facebook. I'm an extreme introvert, and I was getting overwhelmed with Facebook pages and Facebook timeline. So those are some of the things I do. I don't know if that's helpful for anyone.
Your observation about Instagram was really interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I've been trying to build my platform because I know that that's important in trying to sell my book that I wrote a couple of years ago. And my roommate, who's a millennial, and I'm a Gen Xer, she said, why not try Instagram to just kind of get your ideas out there? So I may put up a quote that I made up, or I may put up a quote by another writer like Toni Morrison. Or like I said, I go out every morning and I put up one picture. Sometimes I quote my pastor, but people like different things. The most engagement I got, of course, was during the time when I went for 1 week and I put Black Lives Matter messages leading up to the funeral of George Floyd. And I'm not really a person that's vocal on justice issues, just because I'm more a doer. Like if you want me to march, if you want me to organize things. But my writing has been more theatrical. I do one-woman shows, or I do monologues. So I just didn't do that historically. And so it's been really interesting. Of course, when you're on a social media platform, people are going to follow you if you use the right hashtags. And sometimes you get agitators. And I've been pretty lucky because I only have like maybe 100 people following me right now. But I do notice when I use hashtags like Black Lives Matter, or I write justice, people who like to create chaos do follow you. And I just block them. But it is a simple way to build ideas, because the people I've interacted with are people I know, and most of them are writers that I went to get my MFA from. So usually they'll direct message me some interesting things. So that's really why it probably works for me, because most of my community are either writers or actors or people I went to the University of Georgia with. So it's all about building, and then it's a good way to listen to see what people are talking about in regards to anything. I mean, people are posting their struggles with COVID, their struggles with Black Lives Matter. I follow one young lady because she's like an awesome motivator, and she posted this really raw video about Black Lives Matter. She happened to live in one of the cities that had a lot of protests, and just to see her her realness, because she's a really bubbly, happy person, but to see that video was just heart-wrenching, as she was afraid to go outside. And she's married to a white man, and that pretty much made it more complex for her. Her children are biracial and things like that. So just listening is also something you can do on Instagram, that I found helpful to see where people's heart is. And I try to post things that would either get people to think or make people laugh, or so it's just another way of writing. And you can do a lot of things on Instagram. You can do stories. You can do, there are a lot of things you can do. I'm just learning. But if you're an introvert like me, I love the Day One app. It's your basic writing prompt, and I use it to organize my writing. I have different journals, and I have one from Writing for Your Life at Princeton. I still have every note that I took, and that's actually the first time I used it. So I was so happy that I found all the notes, and I went back to it because at Drew I was given the Fred Buechner Award at that school. You know, they have them at different schools.
Right,
so I won the prize.
I forgot about that. That's great.
Yeah. So that got me back in gear with my writing. So I've been trying to live up to that name in a small way.
Well, good for you.
It's a lot of pressure, but I'm trying.
What was the name of the app that you mentioned?
Day One. I'll put it in the
In the chat?
the chat.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I'm sorry I'm babbling. I live with an extrovert, and I had a day with her. So I let her just do her some days of the week, and today was the day. So, and she's a pastor, so she has a lot of energy. I love it, but you know how it goes. It's like, oh, I have to be ready for this Zoom. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm really interested in your observation on Instagram, because that's one of the platforms that I've neglected myself.
Yeah.
You know, for Writing for Your Life, Publishing Color, Compassionate Christianity, everything I do, I don't really do much on Instagram, and I know that I need to. So that's helpful to what you say about it, because it just motivates me to get going on it.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to mention too, kind of in response to Karen, what you were mentioning about finding other authors to connect with. This is another thing I really haven't made much noise about yet, but I just invited a few people to another platform that I've just started called Authorconnect. It's Authorconnect.net. And you need a special code in order to get into it. So if you're interested in this, you know, shoot me an email and I'll give you the code. But basically, it's like LinkedIn for spiritual writers is the best way I can describe it. Meaning that it's a place where you can have a small profile of yourself, of your books, of your interests, and you can, see the profiles of the other people that are there. And you can do searches by genre or by location or, other attributes. And, then reach out to that person and, get together with them in person once we can do that kind of thing, or get together with them online for now or whatever. Just kind of a networking. It's called authorconnect.net. Let me, since everyone else is doing so well at typing things in. Authorconnect.net is the name of it. And there's a special code, which I think I know what it is, but I don't want to try to type it because I don't want to mess it up. But, if you're interested in this, let me know. And right now, like I said, it's kind of in the beta release where I haven't really advertised it or promoted it or told many people about it. But if it's something and right now it's small, right? So there aren't very many authors that are on it yet, but, just like any other networking platform, hopefully over time it'll grow. And the more it grows, the more people are connected, the more useful it'll be. So anyway, just a FYI about another resource for you to think about. So I've got 9 o'clock Eastern. Any parting thoughts that anyone would like to share? Weird question. Do we ever end with a prayer? So we haven't, mostly because I'm not that comfortable praying, I guess. Not that I don't like to, but I just feel very self-conscious about it. So
I think you probably have a lot of prayer warriors on this call.
Well, Kate, if you would like to lead us in a prayer to close, that would just be wonderful.
Okay, sure. I'll pray us out if people are comfortable with that. It'd be my honor. Dear Lord, we thank you for this time, this holy time, this chance to listen to one another, to listen to the ways that you're calling us, to the ways that you're growing us and stretching us, the ways that you're calling us to risk loving you, risk loving one another, risk loving this messy and broken world, risking love through creativity. We thank you for Brian and his ministry to bring us together. We thank you for the chance to come together in community, virtual community, organic community. And we pray, Lord, that you will heal us and that you will be with us and that you will guide us in the days ahead. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thanks, everyone.
And just one other heads up. We have another monthly event called First Fridays. And the next one is going to be the first Friday in August. And during those webinars, we talk about business stuff, kind of the business of being a spiritual writer, which I know Kate always loves to talk about. But
I thought we were going to talk about it tonight. I was all ready, but this was much more fun.
Stay tuned. We'll probably dedicate an entire second Tuesday just to that question. So
good.
So stay tuned to that. But what I wanted to let you know is that Jennifer Grant, who's on with us tonight, is going to be our featured guest for the next First Friday. Again, I think it's like August 7th, whatever the first Friday in August is. I don't think it's the 7th, but whatever the first Friday in August is. Jen's going to be with us, and we're going to talk about different questions, different aspects of the business of being a spiritual writer. So Karen, did you have something you wanted to share?
Just to say that the 7th is the Friday. Just ask me a Sunday and I can tell you. And then
okay.
The
Good,
9th
good.
is the Sunday, so the 7th is the Friday.
There. Okay. Well, good. Thank you. Jen?
Yeah. Well, I hope everyone will join us if you can on that Friday. It's fun to see names and faces coming up that I'm meeting in other parts of the Writing for Your Life curriculum. So I hope you can join us if you can, or you can watch it later. I think Kate is a much better business person in the world of spiritual writing than I am, but I'm happy to share what I've learned or what I believe to be true or believe not to be true on that day.
It'll be fun. It'll be a great conversation. I know that. Well, thanks everyone. Have a wonderful remainder of the week, and thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.